This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
This video is a quick overview of two murder cults that threaten civilization today. Also, why Russia is so demonized by the American political and press. Also, where this behavior comes from. Now, I was fortunate to have Al Kolajczak, very intelligent, genius teacher, who said how to deal with presenting a message. His overview was, number one, tell them what you're going to tell them. Number two, tell them. And number three, tell them what you told them. So, step one, I'm going to tell you about Mohammad. I'll read you from a list of his accomplishments, a very honorable young man who accomplished many wonderful things. But as caravan leader, he learned the Torah. And where Moses saw this God on the mountain that gave him the power to be an authority and gave him the power to actually murder the whole tribe of his wife. And we'll get some details next. But where this behavior comes from and why can the American politics and press be controlled? It's a genetic thing. The anarchists, the women's liberationists, and the homosexual liberationists have a thing in common against the alpha male. And we'll talk about that, the genetic history of what makes babies, makes the genetics of the future. Okay, so that's the step one. I didn't put in step one. Let me put in why Russia is so demonized, because it has nuclear weapons and will defend Syria and Iran. Okay, let's go over it again. Mohammed was very honorable, and I'll read to you from a list of his the years and what his life. Mohammed was born in 570 years after Jesus. He was an honorable merchant from 13 years old with his uncle. His mother, his father died before he was born. His mother gave him up to be raised by another family. She died. He was then an orphan. His grandfather took over. His grandfather died. Then his uncle took over. His uncle was from one of the four major groups, Arab groups in Mecca. So he worked with his uncle to start with. At 25, Mohammed married Khadija, a wealthy widow, 40 years old. And they lived a monogamous life together, had 2 sons and 4 daughters. He was so honored when they were rebuilding the Kaaba, where that black stone that is worshipped is stored. When they were rebuilding that, when they went to put the stone back, Mohammed was so honored at 35 years old that they said he could put the stone back. And he was wise enough, and they said, no, take a sheet. And of the 4 strong Arab tribes there, let the leader of each take a corner and take the stone back. So he showed respect to others and gained respect for himself. The spiritual thing Mohammed started at 37. Mohammed reported that he was visited by Gabriel in a cave. Appeared to him many times and told him he was a prophet of Allah. Now, this background came from Muhammad learning the Torah verbally. The Jewish merchants that traveled with him at night over the desert as their encampment would recite the Torah. He learned the Torah. And he learned that Moses was up on a mountain. Now, please, let's look at Moses. Moses was discovered in the river by Pharaoh's daughter, and his mother had put him there because they were killing the children at the time. And Moses' mother offered to care for the baby for Pharaoh's daughter, and did until he was weaned. And so he was raised by Pharaoh's daughter. And when he was then about 20, he saw a Jewish man being abused by an Egyptian, and he murdered the Egyptian. And he thought nobody knew anything. He felt safe. But then he come back, and a couple of Jewish men talking to him, "You're going to murder us the way you murdered." And then he realized that the word had gotten out and he wasn't safe. So he escaped and went over into what's now southern Palestine or southern Israel. And at a well was some daughters of the high priest with the sheep going to the water hole, and there were some men that were abusing them, and he defended them and even helped get water out of the well for them, and that was reported to the high priest of the Midianites, and he gave Muhammad a job. Muhammad, 20 years old, got a job to watch his sheep, and then gave him one of his daughters for a wife. And Muhammad lived there until he was 60 years old. And the generation back in Egypt that were a threat to him had died, and he went back to Egypt at that time. And that's when he got involved and come out, and he took after he had this magic god on a mountain give him the power. Read what he did in Numbers chapter 31. The Jewish men and the Midianite women were getting attracted. The Midianite women were attracting as they escaped from Egypt. And he used that as an excuse to murder everyone except the 23,000 virgins. They had left he took 1,000 from each tribe and sent them out to exterminate the Midianites. And the Israeli Jewish soldiers come back with the women and the children. And Moses was angry. Him and the high priest were angry. "We told you to exterminate them. Kill them all except the virgins." They killed the baby boys even. So that's the example that Muhammad learned, that if you're empowered by this God that meets you in private and gives you this power, you can exterminate even your wife's tribe and take all of their property, but keep the virgins. All right. Mohammed learned that. And then later he had these visions, and his wife supported him in being a religious leader. There were many religions there. The Kaaba had had many gods that they worshipped. They had that was a center for Arabic worship. At any rate, they also had the Arab tribe had three female goddesses. At one point, Muhammad said they were daughters of Allah, and then he said no, that was Satan talking. But that was the basis of the 1988 book Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie, which was condemned by Muslims, Shiite and Sunni. The Ayatollah Khomeini, head of Iran, issued a death fatwa for Salman Rushdie, and he's been kind of out of the public light ever since with guards. You can read about those things. But the Arab tribes turned on Muhammad. He had to leave. Many of his people went to Ethiopia, and that's where they learned from the infancy gospel of Thomas that Jesus made mud birds and they flew. That's in the Quran, by the way. Things from the Torah are there also, but Jesus and the mud birds is there. Jesus is in the Quran, not as the superior child of God, but as a prophet, but Muhammad greater prophet. And that's a whole other thing. So that's where that murder cult came from. The big difference between the Jewish murder cult and the Muslim murder cult is the Jewish murder cult is ethnic. You have to be Jewish. Your mother is supposed to be Jewish for you to become a Jew. Like the Ethiopians that came claiming Judaism as their religion and come to Israel. There's a documentation of Israel injecting them that they can't have babies. But that's just another issue. But the point is, for Islam, all you have to do is submit. Either you get your head cut off or you can submit to be essentially a slave, second-class citizen, and pay tribute to them. So these two murder cults, and don't get me wrong, there are many good people. I've had Jewish friends and I've had Muslim friends that weren't taken by the childhood indoctrination, blah, 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 blah. And I'm rejected by many of my Christian friends because I'm exposing the truth of and I was brought up to believe everything is the word of God. And you've got to submit or you're going to hell and you're going to burn. Or everything is the word of God, and if you submit and do what he wants, he'll serve you, and you can have your mate and your cars and your money and your sex and your children, whatever you want. It'll be given to you, but you got to submit to this God and his priesthood. Okay. Where do we go from here? This has morphed into Israel reclaiming the prophecy that they're going to have all this property from the Nile to the Euphrates. And they've been stealing and murdering ever since the Zionists, which many Orthodox Jews resent. The Jews and Christians were living peacefully among the Muslims throughout the Middle East. And then they set up this Zionist plot to kill and take land for the Jewish people. And the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, become enemies of Islam. And look at what's happened to them. And that's why the Jewish worked fine with the Muslims in ruling Spain for 700 years. It was a time of glory for the Jewish. And the Jews did fine helping the German lords to rule over the underlings and keep their books and get their hands dirty with medicine and the sickness, dealing with that. They were literate, and the sons all had to learn to read and write and memorize the Torah, or you know about that. All right, that's the foundation of it, this reestablishment of a murder cult called Zionism, and the insult to any human rights, whether you're Muslim. There are many honorable things about Islam and respecting another person on their rights and so forth, and it was being practiced before Zionism come and destroyed the peace of the Middle East. So that's the basic truth. Read chapter 31 of Numbers, and you'll see where the murder cult example was given to Mohammad. And look at how Moses, the model, went and exterminated his wife's people to get control and power over an area and their material goods. What's it say for today? Today, Israel is using America and all the propaganda against Russia, because Russia has nuclear weapons. Iran has a problem with in Pakistan. The Shiite Muslims have blown up more than 100 Sunni, or the Sunni Muslims have blown up more than 100 Shiite mosques. So the Sunnis were brought there by the wealthy Arabs in the confrontation with the breakup of India, that they wanted India to be a Muslim state, and all of the madrasas that they put in and indoctrination for strict Saudi Islam, and made Shiites the enemies, as well as the Russians and the Hindus, and all the murder that brought. But at any rate, now Iran is standing up against Israel as an honorable thing to all these people that have been murdered and displaced by this evil murder cult. How do you destroy the destroyer? An important element here is many honorable, respectful Muslims, Salafists, are against the Saudi royalty. They're a corrupt modern society, like the corruption of Christian society and modernism, and advocating homosexuality and all these things. And here's a Sunni prince caught on camera beating his homosexual slave in France, and then he goes to his room in the hotel and murders him, and the prince got caught. He's in jail. But the corruption of upper class people that give their baby, the women don't want to care for their babies. They have somebody else care for them, so that they are narcissistic, and the lower, all children, boys like boys and girls like girls. If they have a strong foundation, they grow through it. And when the hormones hit, they like the opposite sex. But if they don't have the foundation, they end up narcissistic. Or if the foundation, as you can see, the explosion of behavior where the children are just going blah, 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 because they've been set in a crib deprived, put in early daycare or whatever, and no breastfeeding, and shoved with a rubber nipple instead of human interaction. But that's another thing. Don't let me get off on that. The corruption of the upper class Arab society is the enemy of responsible Muslims that want to build healthy homes. And Syria is also the enemy of the Saudi royalty, because many of the Arab Emirates are majority Shiite, and the Sunnis are dominating them and won't give them rights. And so that's a conflict there. And you probably heard the Saudi royalty had the chief religious Shiite imam beheaded. So the Saudi royalty and the Jewish are working together and paying the United States and the political system run by that AIPAC Jewish organization that both Republicans and Democrats, nobody will go against it, just like they wouldn't go against the AMA. But that's a whole other thing. All right. So there's the crux of the Iran, the conflict within Sunni Muslims, the corrupt upper class, and the imams that are still preaching honorable Islam. The upper class is their enemy, a corrupt enemy. But so you see how the Israel and the Saudi royalty work together, and America, while they're supplying the weapons to murder all those people in Yemen. That I don't want to take too long with this. The other thing I want to make clear is I have the greatest respect for Abraham as the archetype who's set aside a special people who didn't sacrifice their babies. That's what made the children of Abraham in a culture where women want to get rid of their babies. In America now, there's more infants murdered than live births, I think, and there was in Russia in the early 90s more abortions than live births. But that's a whole another thing. I value myself as a child of Abraham. As Jesus said, you could raise children of Abraham up from the dirt. That it's the behavior, respect for human life. And to me, Jesus is not some magic out of the clouds. Jesus is so honorable. He was a normal, natural human being, even if his mother wasn't married when she got pregnant. He lived honorably and confronted this murder cult that was indoctrinating this whole nation of people. And he stood up and said, we can go directly to our source of existence. And for that, the Sanhedrin had him murdered by the Roman authorities. And they wouldn't even let him, the Romans wanted to let Barabbas, wanted to let Jesus go, and they said, no, give us Barabbas, a murderer. So that's it. I want to make this a short version, so I'm going to put the ending on now.
This is the ending message. This is the website, The Way, the Truth, and the Life. These are the guest rooms in our 3 homes, New York, Florida, and Russia. They are prepared for those messengers that Jesus prayed for in Luke chapter 10. And he gave them the instructions. Reading from Luke chapter 10, verse 1. After these things the Lord appointed 70 other also, and sent them 2 by 2 before his face into every city and place whither he himself would come. As Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am with them. Verse 2, therefore he said unto them, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth laborers into the harvest. This is Jesus praying for more servants and asking us to do the same. Verse 3, Go your ways. Behold, I send you forth as lambs among wolves. Verse 4, Carry neither purse nor scrip, nor shoes, and salute no man on the way. Verse 5, And into whatsoever house ye enter, first say, Peace be to this house. Verse 6, And if the Son of Peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it. If not, it shall return unto you again. Verse 7, And in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they give, for the laborer is worthy of his hire. Go not from house to house. Verse 8, And into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you, eat such things as they set before you. Verse 9, And heal the sick that are therein, and say to them, The kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 10, But into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you not, go your way out into the streets of the same, and say, Verse 11, Even the very dust of your city, which cleaves on us, we wipe off against you. Notwithstanding, be ye sure of this, that the kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 12, But I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. In closing, remember Matthew 18, verse 20, where Jesus said, For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them.
As I end, I want to add 2 important points. Number 1, I definitely believe in the power of prayer, not some magic thing. The Russian rabbit experiment and the ability of people to intuitively communicate is, to me, if you looked at my physics, I explain the Michelson-Morley experiment differently, and the ether does exist, and it's probably ether waves that we can be on the same wavelength somehow with other people and communicate, good and bad. But so I believe in the power of prayer. Look at the Russian rabbit experiments. They were released by the CIA. You can find that on my website too. But or just Google Russian rabbit experiment. The other thing is, our leader should not be a man or a woman. This dominant male, manipulative female, homosexual, women's liberation, working together for anarchy has to stop. We want healthy families, and what we have to have for our leaders and our judges and our government authority and those over our home churches is a man and a woman who have shown by their examples of the children they've raised, healthy children that have healthy homes. That is a prerequisite for a position of being over the society, government, home churches, whatever. A man and a woman working together that show by their children that they can bear fruit. By their fruit you shall know them. Thank you.